Yep. You're under arrest on suspicion of murder on the 10th of this month, November, in the Meadows.
Stand still, stand still. I want you to raise your jacket up. Want to see if you've got anything. Turn around. Right, walk towards me. Walk towards me.
Nottingham is a city known for its history and culture. But behind the scenes, a darker story has been unfolding. In recent years, drug gangs have brought violence to its streets, turning parts of the city into battlegrounds. One gang in particular, led by Tmaine McKenzie and Jezel, ran a drug operation that ended in bloodshed, fear and eventually long prison sentences. Their group was heavily involved in selling cocaine and using weapons to protect their business. Things reached a breaking point in November 2021 when a man named Michael O'Connor was stabbed to death in a quiet residential street. This killing exposed far more than a personal feud. It pulled back the curtain on a gang willing to use deadly force to stay in control. In this story, we'll look at who these men were, how they built their drug empire, and how police worked to take them down. It's a story of greed, violence, and the damage caused when people choose crime over community. Tmaine McKenzie was well known to police long before the murder that would bring him to national attention. Living in Nottingham, he had been involved in drug dealing for years. He wasn't just selling small amounts on the street. McKenzie was at the top of a growing operation, moving large amounts of cocaine and making serious money. He was smart, organized, and dangerous. Police say he ran his gang like a business, but one built on violence and fear. By his side was Jezel, another key player in the group. Dennis helped keep the gang running smoothly, making sure drugs were delivered, debts were collected, and problems were dealt with quickly, sometimes with force. The pair didn't act alone. The gang was made up of more than a dozen men, each with their own role. Some were drivers, some acted as lookouts, and others delivered drugs or carried weapons. The group operated across Nottingham and beyond. They used safe houses to store cocaine, burner phones to arrange deals, and cars with hidden compartments to move drugs around. They took steps to stay out of sight, rotating vehicles, avoiding contact with known offenders, and using women or younger gang members to front deals in riskier areas. But their lifestyle told a different story. Photos shared on social media showed holidays abroad, designer clothes, champagne clubs, and fast cars on quiet city streets. It wasn't hard to guess the money wasn't clean. Police would later say that the gang's flashy spending habits helped investigators confirm how deeply involved they were in drug dealing. Behind the Instagram posts and designer labels was a system held together by threats and violence. Anyone who crossed the gang, whether rival dealers, customers, or even former associates, risked serious harm. There were reports of beatings, intimidation, and retaliatory attacks, some of which never made the news. Their world was secretive, but like many gangs, greed and pride made them careless. Arguments over money and territory with other dealers created tension, and as police would later reveal, these tensions would eventually lead to murder. This wasn't a group of petty criminals. They were organized, ruthless, and willing to do whatever it took to keep control of their drug business. But while they thought they were untouchable, they didn't realize just how closely the police were watching. By late 2021, tensions in Nottingham's drug world were rising. McKenzie's gang had made a name for themselves, but their growing success brought enemies. There were whispers of rival dealers encroaching on their patch, and trust within their own group was beginning to show cracks. Power, money, and status were all in play, and each man involved had something to lose. The man caught in the middle was Michael O'Connor, a 31-year-old from Alexandra Park. O'Connor wasn't part of McKenzie's gang, but he had connections across Nottingham's drug scene. Some believed he was working with a competing group. Others said he was simply trying to broker a peace between feuding factions. What's certain is that McKenzie's gang saw him as a threat, and in their world, threats had to be dealt with quickly. On the evening of November 10, 2021, O'Connor was called to Wilford Crescent West, a residential street in the Meadows. He believed he was helping settle a dispute. He brought no weapon, but it was a trap, an ambush planned down to the minute. As he arrived, a group of masked men emerged. and attacked. Within moments, O'Connor was stabbed through the chest. The violence was fast and targeted. The men who struck him ran off almost immediately, leaving him bleeding on the ground. Despite the best efforts of emergency services, he was pronounced dead at the scene. He never stood a chance. The murder sent shockwaves through the community. The Meadows, while no stranger to crime, had never seen such a cold, calculated killing in broad daylight on a quiet street. Neighbors recalled the sirens, the flashing blue lights, and the helpless feeling of watching paramedics try to save a man already beyond help. It didn't take long for detectives to realize this wasn't a random street fight. The men who killed O'Connor weren't locals. They'd been brought in from Manchester and Birmingham, paid to carry out the hit. This was a gang sending a message not just to O'Connor, but to anyone who might be thinking of crossing them. In the hours that followed, Nottingham streets remained on edge. Tensions between rival groups simmered just beneath the surface, and police braced for further retaliation. Then, in a separate incident just minutes after the murder, Jezel Dennis was caught on CCTV trying to fire a gun at another man believed to be linked to a rival gang. The gun jammed. No one was shot, but the warning was loud and clear. This wasn't about personal beefs or petty arguments. This was a turf war, one with its own rules, its own economy, and its own body count. Michael O'Connor, whether knowingly or not, had become part of it. What looked like one night of violence was in fact the climax of months of growing pressure between criminal groups fighting over power, profit, and survival. And that single act, a knife in the chest on a quiet residential street, would be the beginning of the end for McKenzie's gang. Police had seen enough. They knew there was more going on beneath the surface. And now, with a man dead and CCTV linking the gang to an attempted shooting just streets away, the hunt was on. The murder of Michael O'Connor triggered one of Nottinghamshire Police's biggest investigations in recent years, named Operation Havsac. The inquiry would go far beyond a single stabbing. It would uncover a web of criminal activity, violent intimidation, and drug trafficking that had gone unchecked for far too long. From the beginning, detectives believed the attack had been planned. The level of coordination using men from out of town, burner phones, and names made it clear this wasn't a spontaneous street fight. So, officers started from the ground up, piecing together evidence from mobile phone data, CCTV vehicle tracking, and witness accounts. CCTV footage proved invaluable. Cameras across Nottingham captured the movements of key gang members and the hired attackers in the days leading up to the murder. One car, a black Toyota, was picked up traveling repeatedly between Birmingham and Nottingham, carrying members of the hit team. Detectives followed this trail and matched times, dates, and movements with call records and hotel bookings. Police also tapped into communications data. They discovered that McKenzie and others were in near constant contact with their associates in the days before the murder. Phones were activated and deactivated within short windows, used only once or twice before being discarded. Messages were sent using encrypted apps and through public Wi-Fi to mask the source. They also traced hotel records. Rooms were booked under false names, often for only one night. But investigators managed to cross-reference these with CCTV of gang members checking in, often in groups, carrying bags, or meeting other associates in the lobby. These seemingly small details helped build a broader picture of how the hit had been organized. Surveillance footage caught Jezel Dennis just minutes after the murder, attempting to shoot a rival. Another moment that helped police show that violence was not just a response but part of a deliberate campaign to control territory. Over the following months, police carried out coordinated raids across Nottingham, Birmingham, and Manchester. They seized burner phones, clothing worn, the attack, cash, drugs, weapons, and encrypted devices. They also found Class A drugs being processed for street-level supply. Clear proof of a large-scale drug operation running alongside the violence. Detectives built a timeline that mapped who gave orders, who carried them out, and who tried to clean up the mess. By the time the case reached the Crown Prosecution Service, they had enough evidence to charge McKenzie, Dennis, and 12 others with offenses, including conspiracy to murder, drug trafficking, firearms offenses, and money laundering. Police described Operation Havsac as a turning point, not just because of the number of convictions, but because of the level of cooperation and detail involved. The arrests began quietly. Police moved in on key suspects across Nottingham, Birmingham, and Manchester, timing the raids to avoid any leaks or sudden disappearances. Within days, Tmaine McKenzie, Jezel and several other gang members were in custody. The rest were rounded up soon after. Each man was brought in for questioning, but most refused to talk. Many gave no comment interviews, hoping silence would protect them. They denied knowing each other, denied being in Nottingham that night, denied everything. But the evidence told a different story, and it was piling up fast. The trial, held at Nottingham Crown Court, lasted over 4 months. It involved 14 defendants, each facing a range of serious charges: conspiracy to murder, firearms offenses, drug supply, money laundering. Security at the court was tight, and the public gallery was often full, with families of both